Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. Today's conversation features singer-songwriter Alex Cuba. Born Alexis Puentes in Artemisa, Cuba, Alex has lived in Canada since 1999. He's won 2 Juno Awards for World Music Album of the Year, both in 2006 and 2008, and 2 Latin Grammys. Growing up, he was immersed in music. His father was a respected guitarist and teacher named Valentin Puentes, and as a young boy, Alex appeared in his dad's guitar ensemble on Cuban national television, playing percussion. He then went on to study guitar and bass. He immigrated to Canada in 1999 after marrying a Canadian. Both he and his twin brother, Adonis, first settled in Victoria, British Columbia, and worked as a duo called the Puentes Brothers. In 2003, Cuba moved to Smithers, British Columbia, the hometown of his wife Sarah, whose father is a local politician. Alex then went on to record his first solo album, Humo de Tabaco, which earned him a Juno Award in 2006, and his second album, Agua del Pozo, in 2007, earned a second Juno Award. His first Latin Grammy came in 2010 for Best New Artist, and his second in 2012 as a songwriter for the song Toma Mi Vida. I first met Alex nearly a decade ago when his first solo album had just been released. We stayed in touch over the years, and eventually in the fall of 2014, we worked together on the production of his 5th solo record, Healer. Recorded mostly in Brooklyn, the record will be released later this spring. This interview was recorded late in the evening following a long day of recording, and I think you can feel it in the kind of candor and delirium that fatigue provides. I think Alex is one of the most naturally gifted songwriters I've ever come across. His creative output is nonstop and intense. He has a deeply intuitive approach, but at the same time he has a real formation in traditional Cuban music and a wide-open pop sensibility. One thing that has intrigued me about Alex since I met him is how he reconciles his identity as a contemporary Latin singer-songwriter with his adopted home in the wilds of British Columbia. Before we get started with the conversation, I'm delighted to play one of the songs off his new record from the forthcoming Alex Cuba project, Healer. Here's the song, Brindo.
Brindo por tu boca dibujando mi ilusión en cada palabra que tus labios dejan ir, regalándome el amor y diciendo que eres tú para mí. Nunca había tenido un ser humano como tú, que de mariposas hoy me viste el corazón. Cada beso que me da me devuelve el mismo sol que le doy. Eres el centro de muchas cosas, de aquella nube que nos cubrió, la madrugada que nunca tuve, tan tierna y dulce como el amor que me das. Brindo por el tiempo que he pasado sin brindar, por cada silencio que ha dejado de acudir al encuentro de mi voz, a mis ganas de reír, de soñar. Si las maldiciones me vinieran a buscar, tarde llegarían, se tuvieran que marchar, porque nadie como tú en segundos me da un siglo de amor. Y eres el centro de muchas cosas, de aquella nube que nos cubrió, la madrugada que nunca tuve, tan tierna y dulce como el amor que me das. Que me das. Dibujando mi ilusión, el amor que me das, el amor que me das, que me das, que me das, que me das con tu vida, estando contigo mi amor, el mundo se vuelve mejor. El amor que me das, de mariposas que me viste entero el corazón. El amor yo lo sé, el más bonito querer, el amor que me da.
Alex Cuba, thank you so much for being here, man.
My pleasure, man. It's been an amazing trip.
It's full circle, man. I remember when I first moved to New York, I met you right away, almost right away. And it's like 8 or 9 years later, here we are, sitting in a room again together.
Yeah.
When I first met you, it seemed like your recording career had just started. But you were already living in what sounds to me like the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
Where is this? North of Victoria in Canada?
Yeah, it's the northern area of British Columbia, the province, you know. It's about an hour and a half on an airplane from Vancouver, in a valley called Berkeley Valley. Yeah, it's beautiful. The name of the town is Smithers, BC. Smithers, BC.
Looking at you and talking to you, it's pretty clear that that's not where you were born.
Of course not. And sometimes people have a hard time figuring out that that's where I live.
I can't imagine what it must have been like when you first started spending time in Smithers, walking around on the streets. What you thought of the people there and what they thought of you.
Well, to start with, it's a lovely town. You know, people in Smithers are very friendly. I think the whole country of Canada is like that, but Smithers even more. And people like music there a lot. There is a lot of musicians or people that plays instruments there, you know, and so I really did feel from the beginning that it was totally a place where I was going to be able to make my life there, you know, and live there and raise a family, which is the main reason why I moved up there. It was a family decision, you know, based on finding a great place for my kids to grow up and making sure that they felt a community, they felt part of a community, and you know what they say, you know, this might be a little cliche or whatever. They say it takes a whole community to raise a child, you know, and I see that every day in Smithers, you know.
What was the community like when you were growing up?
Cuba, when I was growing up, was paradise, man. It was, we have no shortage of anything, you know, and music was everywhere. Very happy country, very, I don't know, naturally beautiful, as everybody knows, you know, like we don't have to worry about weather there, except on hurricane seasons, I guess. But yeah, very happy. I had a very happy upbringing and completely immersed in music, you know, through my father.
Your father's a musician? Yeah,
my father taught me how to play guitar and all that. He studied guitar classically, you know, he's classically trained. And then he started teaching at a cultural center. Every town in Cuba has a house of culture. They call it House of Culture. And it's a government project to teach kids, you know, from when they are in like maybe grade 5 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Teach them an instrument, you know.
Everybody learns one.
Yeah, and theater and painting, all of that for free. It's a really incredible project because if you discover that your kid has musical talent from early age, you take your kid to one of these places, and that's boom, the beginning of what could be like mine, a musical career, you know. And I find actually I have left so much inside of me, you know, that sometimes when people approach me in Smithers or anywhere and, you know, try to get me to teach them something, I feel bad charging them money because it was passed on to me for free, you know.
It's different cultural values maybe, you know, or national values, what people prioritize. It also makes me wonder, you know, you said if you recognize that your child has some talent, you can sign them up for classes.
Yeah.
It also seems like there are a lot of children in Cuba that show signs of talent.
Yeah, for sure.
How much of that do you think is culture, and how much of that do you think is deeper than just culture?
Well, I think it's a lot of culture, yeah, for sure. And culture is everything, you know, pretty much. No matter how you're looking at it, the way we live, for example, because of the weather in Cuba, nobody closes the door and all the windows are open, you know, and we like playing music really loud and all that, you know. So our culture is like that, really upfront, you know. And so people, I don't know, learn how to dance from early age, and music is everywhere, you know. It's like, I think it's a very important thing it's almost like a celebration of culture, you know, when you have music happening in so many places, you know, and it's so easy to access, you know. most of the shows are free and so all of that, you know. So I think it has a lot to do with culture for sure.
I know you're a twin. You have a twin brother too.
I do.
I imagine you guys were learning to play music at the same time.
Yeah.
What's your memory of your childhood learning music and playing music with your brother as well?
It was kind of interesting because I was the kind of kid, you know, that my father didn't have to ask me to practice or to grab a guitar or whatever. I was there, right there. My father would sit down and play something, and I would be right in front of him listening to him. Then when he would put the guitar down and walk away, I would pick up the guitar and try to play while he was playing, you know. I started when I was 4 years old. I went to a national TV show when I was 4 years old. My father had an orchestra, guitar orchestra of 24 kids, 24 guitars. That was his thing. He got actually a lot of recognition in Cuba for that because he was the only player on the island like that, you know. And I was playing claves with that band. Mm-hmm. We went to a national TV show, you know, television show, and I still remember that moment. It was incredible. I was so nervous, but at the same time, I was also excited. My brother was a little bit harder to keep him focused because he's always been very, how can I say, he was very energetic from the get-go. So it was hard to keep him calm and patient enough to learn something, right? He always wanted to go out and, you know, and be with friends and you know. I guess that's what made him be a frontman, you know, from the get-go. He became a singer really, really early, you know, because he wanted to be the front, you know.
Yeah.
And it was fun having. I guess somehow that was a little competition to you in a way, you know, because I guess it happens when you have a twin brother and your father is teaching both of you. You know, I guess at some point I probably felt a little competitive, and that made me practice even more. I don't know, you know, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I think my dad did a good job. I know it's challenging now as a father. I know that it's challenging to teach your own kids, you know, so I am eternally grateful for my father, you know, because he put the time, he gave me the attention, you know.
What was the early music that you listened to when you were young?
My father is like an encyclopedia of Cuban music, you know, so he was always playing traditional Cuban music in Cuba, but at the same time in the house. But at the same time, he was also playing a lot of feeling music. In Cuba, that was a movement called feeling. In Spanish, funny because we spell it F-I-L-I-N-G, right? No, without the G at the end. Feeling, yeah. And it comes from the word, the English word of feel, right? Feeling, you know, you're feeling. And what it is, you know, for example, you are a singer, you grab it, you find a guitar player to accompany you, right? And the guitar player will play in a very free style, you know, with a lot of blues and jazz influence. So my dad was all over that. At the same time, he was all over Brazilian music. And so my house was, from very early in my life, it was this mixed, you know, this mixture of Cuban traditional music, Brazilian music, blues, jazz, all of it together, you know. And I guess that makes for a really, you know, diverse and great environment, you know. And then when I was like 11 years or something, Michael Jackson, I think Michael Jackson was one of the first American sort of singers, you know, that I heard. And hit me really hard on the head when I saw him dancing to Billie Jean, you know. And that from there, that was no going back on any specific kind of music. I was listening to a lot of things, you know.
Did you have a sense when you were a teenager that you might want to leave Cuba at some point?
No, when I was a teenager, no. I knew that I liked American music a lot, and it was grabbing me. You know, when I was 14, I turned into a bass player. I saw somebody playing electric bass in front of me, and I turned to my dad and I said, "Dad, what is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's an electric bass." I said, "I need one." The following week, I had one. My dad got me one. And then I started playing and studying so much. I found myself a teacher in town, a private teacher, somebody by the name of El Chupao is a nickname. Somebody that walked me through music, you know, and not only taught me how to play the bass, but taught me good taste in music, you know. And the first lesson he gave me was I showed up at his place, and he said to me, "Play. What do you like?" So I was slapping on the bass, you know, Said, oh, okay, I know where you're coming from. I know what you like to do. Okay, kid, go back home with these 10 tapes that I'm going to give you. We didn't have CDs back then. It was all tapes. And I see you next month. Those tapes were Ron Carter, John Patitucci, Marcus Miller, Charles Mingus, Jago Pastorius, and Alan Caron from Canada, with the band, Yusef, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I went back home, and for me, it was like a kid with a new toy. Oh my God, I got so much. And in a month, I learned by ear many of the solos on those tapes. And he knew that what he was doing. When I went back, I already knew how to play. So we started then theory there, and he started teaching me how to read music. And, we were doing the Cuban School of Bass by Carlos de Puerto and Silvio Vergara. It's a wonderful book, that if you play it, if you go through those books, I think you're good for life,
Yeah.
And so that happens. That from like I said, from that point, there was no turn back anymore on any specific kind of music. I liked all kind of music, and I was listening to everything.
You strike me as somebody who's very open musically, in some ways maybe even more so than a lot of the other Cuban musicians and songwriters that I've encountered. I know that you didn't go through the Cuban conservatory program like a lot of other musicians did. You kind of taught yourself with this teacher and on your own.
Yeah. And with my father, yeah.
And with your father and your family. What were the reasons that you stayed out of conservatory, and what is the conservatory like in Cuba?
I think my parents didn't want to send us to school because of health reasons. My brother and I, we were both asthmatics, and the school was kind of far away from town, and so my parents were maybe a little overprotective that way. I don't know, because who knows what would happen, but that's the main reason why we didn't go to the music school. Yeah, sometimes I go back and forth in my own mind and say, oh, how would it be if I went to school, because the Cuban School of Music is very good, I mean, no questions about it. It's very good, and it's very developed. However, they don't focus at all on popular styles of music like jazz or something like that. It's all classical, and I feel that sometimes for creativity, too much strain is dangerous as well. Because you would never break rules anymore because you are inside of all of them. I remember reading something from Pastorius. I said that he was more intuitive before. He knew less theory, right, and stuff like that. But anyway, that's pretty much the reason why. So, as you imagine, it's been a life of really focusing on what you want to say and developing your craft on your own. That's what I feel I've done.
What were you doing in Cuba before you left? What were the final years of your life in Cuba like?
I had really good, maybe 3 years before I left, because in 1995 I went to Canada for the first time. My father created a little quintet. I was the musical director because I was already writing music and writing songs. The bass player as well. I was playing upright bass and little cowbell with my foot. So that sort of on traditional Cuban music, right? And my brother was the bongo player and lead singer. And we had a tres player, trumpet player, and my father on guitar. And with that, we went to Canada on a tour, and that's where I met my wife, who is Sarah, my wife. And then I went back to Cuba, and somebody was looking for a bass player in a band in Havana, a famous singer, a pop singer, very famous on the island. His name is Augusto Enrique. I was looking for a bass player, and I said, I got a phone call, and somebody called me, hey, you want to be part of this band? I looked to my dad and said, would you let me go? And he said, of course. So I went to Havana, and it was very ironic because, of course, they were trying out musicians, right? Like auditioning musicians. Even though it was for a pop band, they weren't auditioning you or any player that was coming to be, to be heard with pop music. They were throwing jazz at people.
Uh-huh.
So I showed up, and the first thing I heard was, okay, let's play something. Can you play All the Things You Are? Okay, sure. So my jazz training came in handy there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I made it. They loved my playing, and then we started playing. And then inside the same band, a jazz band was created. It was a revolutionary time for me because I think it sort of accelerated my learning process, even more, and it helped defining a total identity, and taste for me and all of that, right? So I recorded 3 albums with that band, and we were doing really well in Cuba. A lot of recognition. I remember Chucho Valdés walking into our rehearsals a couple of times, and then Chucho Valdés quoting me as one of the best from the young generation, one of the best bass players around. And I was like, I feel like that I left just when I was grabbing the momentum.
Yeah. Wow. But eventually you did leave.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to mention the name of the players that I was playing with, because I really admire and I really, I love this guy. He really became a friend of mine. The leader of the band, his name is Roberto Fonseca, an incredible piano player. He actually was the piano player that covered for Rubén González on Buenos Aires Club when Rubén González passed away. He was the piano player that was brought to Buenos Aires Club. And but it's funny because he was from Havana City. We have the same birthday. He's 1 year younger than me. His mother has the same name that my mother has. His mother has the same birthday that my mother has.
Whoa.
We live on the same street in two different towns. It was something incredible like that. He was an expert in jazz, right? Like, he got it down. I had Cuban music to the fullest. We went on a trip one time to Italy and with Augusto, with the pop singer.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody screams from the audience, "Play La Guantanamera!" La Guantanamera is the most classic Cuban song ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Roberto didn't know how to play La Guantanamera. He knew how to play every single jazz tune in the world, but he didn't know La Guantanamera. So I started doing the tumbao on the bass, using chords. Mm-hmm. And then the band joined in, and then he learned it, right?
Yeah.
But then it was funny that he ended up playing with Buenos Aires Club, and I think it was a wonderful time for him because he brought then to his world his roots.
The roots, yeah.
But I'm really thankful. I was the little shy boy from the small town, and I had to play in front, in the middle of all these amazing players with big names and all that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thankful for that.
What were the circumstances then that eventually led you out of Cuba?
In that trip, as I said, I met Sarah, and she was just enough for me to want to leave. Although she loved Cuba, and she spent a year and a half with me in Cuba, she loves Cuba. She didn't want to leave. But I said, I want to go and explore on all the learning, all of the influences that I got from American music, all of that. I want to amplify that and be in a place where I could make that possible, and also, there is deeper reasons to that as well, because that I've been, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've been sort of shy from talking publicly about them, but I think I won't be shy anymore, because I think, people need to hear the truth. Cuba was going through a really bad time. So people had all kinds of confusions, happening, and I felt that our marriage was very threatening, by what was happening in Cuba, our marriage, Like, we would walk down the street and people would give us weird looks, She would wait for me in a corner because we forgot something at home, and I would run back home and somebody would come and say, "Hey, what are you doing with that black man? What is that?" And whatever. And then I felt that it wasn't safe for I am almost certain that if we stayed in Cuba, we wouldn't be married now.
Was it racially motivated?
Yeah, that had a lot to do with it. Because when there is an economic crisis, I think people don't think anymore with their heart. It all becomes survival. Mm-hmm. And that's what was happening in Cuba. And I ran away from that in order to protect, and I am proud to say it, in order to protect my marriage, in order to protect the love that I was feeling for her and the love that I knew she felt for me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow, man. Well, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. So you go to Canada, then you leave Cuba and you go to Canada. And what did you think would be waiting there for you? Or what did you think you might find?
I am very thankful that my wife made it clear to me that one thing was to go to Canada as a visitor, as I did in 95, musician playing music everywhere, and everybody looking at you and, wow, the Cuban musician, Mm-hmm. That's one thing, and the other is to go and to live there. Because you lose all the time, you lose the
exoticism.
And you're no stranger anymore. All the time now you have to play by the same rules. And so she made it clear to me, and that somehow prepared me mentally to say, I am convinced that I want to do this. So let's go. In my heart, I wanted to become somebody's bass player, somebody with a name in Canada. I was aiming because I went through the Alanis Morissette album, that first one. Jagged Little Pill.
Jagged Little Pill, yeah.
That album taught me English too. I learned a lot of songs in there, and I learned a lot, because I wasn't speaking as I can speak today, right? But anyway, so I fell in love with her music, and I was like, I want to become her bass player, or...
And she's a Canadian star.
Yeah, or maybe Bryan Adams or somebody like that. I wanted to do that, But when I left, my brother had already stayed in Canada. He was already in Canada, somehow waiting for me. He went with the band like 6 months before I went. And when it was time for them to go back, they decided to stay. It was like 6 Cuban musicians. So I made it to the same town, to Victoria. My father-in-law was a politician. He was an MLA, working at the government of the provincial government.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has purchased a house, an older house that was up for a good price. So he got together with a couple more people and bought the house, thinking also on, benefit his daughter and me, right? Giving us cheap rent and whatever, right? So I'm saying this because I could have gone to Toronto, a different city where my brother was or whatever, but I ended up going to Victoria because of that. So as soon as I landed there, then that was kind of where to go for me, and we created a Cuban band, and so things started changing from my original sort of plan, right? The band didn't have any material, any original music. All they were doing, they were, up to when I got there, they were just doing covers, Latin, La Bamba, and all of the cliche Latino music, right? I showed up and I had like a folder under my arm with a lot of music and a million ideas. So I started writing for this band. We had 3 horns, and it was a full Latin band, kind of salsa band, right? And I started writing and bringing new songs to the band, and it was quite a success in the little town. People started noticing that right away. But that triggered something in me, triggered what became later on the shift from being just a bass player to then start becoming more of the songwriter. And with that songwriting, the singer was born, because I started singing my songs. And then with that band, one night my brother made me sing for people, and people loved it, and all of that. And one time I was walking down the street with my wife, and I saw this ad, at one of the music stores. Festival of Arts, you can enter, whatever. It's going to be a workshop with 2 really well-known musicians from there. So I saw that and it looked interesting to me. I always wanted, from the moment I got there, I wanted to be embraced in the community. I didn't want to hide away and only perform Latin music for Latin people or for whoever knew about Cuban music, whatever. I wanted to be known there. I saw that and I said, wow, it was $75, to apply for it, right? We didn't think about it twice. My wife and I had $80 in my pocket. I paid for it right there. I had made in Cuba before I left a demo of about 4 instrumental jazz pieces, for bass that I composed, that I wrote, and I recorded them. It was funny because it was recorded from tape to tape. Anyway, I applied with that, and 2 weeks later they called me, yes, you are approved, right? So that was the beginning of a lot of things for me, because it was a 3-day conference, and at the end of the 3rd day we were going to do a show. So the first day I get there, I was kind of shy, I didn't have much English. One of the teachers was originally from Puerto Rico, so he was helping me out. And so the second day I got a little more relaxed. And during the little recess that we had to eat, something, whatever, I asked one of the participants there that had a guitar, I asked, can I play your guitar? Because I was there with my bass. Can I play your guitar? And he said, oh, shoot. I started playing. Then, without thinking, I started singing, right? And one of the teachers saw me and came quietly to my side and said, I didn't know you also sing. You apply here as a bass player, but what is this? Can you sing for us tomorrow at the show? And I said, no, I won't do it. I was so afraid of it, right? And he convinced me to do it. And he gave me this huge introduction the following day, right? At a little theater in town. This guy applies as a bass player and blah. Man, when I opened my mouth and I was singing one traditional Cuban song. It was by Maria Teresa Vera, 20 años. Omar Apotondo covered it on the Buenos Aires Club first album. Yeah. As soon as I opened my mouth with one, the whole theater went on their feet and started clapping, man. That was the beginning of me singing in Canada. Anyway, so all of it to tell you that I had one thing in mind, and then suddenly everything changes, and I just went with it.
Do you think that if you had stayed in Cuba, you would have ever found that voice?
That's a great question. And it's one question that I have answered so many times in my career, and I don't get tired of it. Because I am certain that I would have never been a singer in Cuba. And I'm going to tell you why. Because my voice is not reminiscent of Cuban singers, of the voice that you find in most Cuban singers. And I'm going to tell you why. Cuban music is the cliche Cuban singer is bright voice, high pitch, ready to command a 16-piece band. It's like a trumpet, right?
Yeah.
To me, that makes it far from soulful. I don't know why. It becomes all about your power, your high notes, but it's not necessarily about that. Maybe intimate is the word. So I never had the encouragement to sing in Cuba. Although I was already singing my songs very shy, my dad would tell me, maybe let your brother sing it. My brother has a brighter voice, right, than me. And then I moved to Canada, and completely the opposite happens. It's like people love my voice. It goes through language like you have no idea, because people love it. It's this nostalgia, that my voice encounters soul, I guess. I discovered all of this in Canada. I didn't have a clue that it was gonna do that. So I started doing it, and I remember when I did an album in Canada before I became Alex Cuba with my brother. It was the Puentes Brothers was our band. And on that album, I did 2 songs singing as lead, because the producer, a guy from Toronto by the name of Peter Cardinali, is a jazz producer. He made me sing. He said, "No, you gotta sing. I love your voice. I just love your voice." And I did 2 songs on there. When we sent the album to my parents, my dad listens to the album when that song number 3 is called Desatino. It's a slow ballad, Starts playing. My mom tells me later that he was like, and then when he hears my voice, he was paralyzed. When the song was done, my dad was in tears. He couldn't listen to that song like at least for 2 weeks after that, until he put himself together again.
Wow.
And he started listening to it. When I went back and I listened and I heard the story, I couldn't believe it. I said to my dad, "Dad, why do you think that makes you cry? This means so much to me, He said, "Well, it's just, the song is beautiful, And I said, "Dad, it's just that?" He said, "No, and you sing it really well." I said, "Dad, this is an incredible moment right here, that I'm experiencing." I started crying myself too, because it's like, what the hell? If I would have not left Cuba, I would have never been a singer, because Cuba would never encourage me to do it. And look what I found in Canada, I found my voice.
Yeah.
I don't have to compete with opera singers. I just have to be the voice of what I write and do it from my heart. As long as you do that, people are going to be touched.
Yeah. One of the things I think is so interesting is, as we're talking about your musical development and the idea of finding your voice, there's a piece of it that still isn't entirely clear to me, which is that you are also really a writer. You work with words a lot. And your musical development is one thing, but that doesn't necessarily explain or predict the fact that you became a songwriter of real meaningful language also.
Thank you. I wrote my first song when I went to the army in Cuba. This is something that I didn't say. We kept it. We went to Canada.
Yeah.
Anyway, when I was 17 years old, when I finished grade 12, I went to the army. The army took me away. My brother didn't go because he had flat feet. And in Cuba, if you have flat feet, you don't go. In my case, I was asthmatic, but my files, my medical history, whatever, disappeared. And then I was asked to do this test, but they said that I was faking it, that I wasn't contributing to the test. So I ended up going. I had to go to the army. I was already a bass player for a famous band in Havana. I was like a rock singer from Havana. And I was taken away 2 weeks before we were supposed to head for Vietnam on a tour. So it was really hard on me. It was, just imagine, 17-year-old playing from a little town, already made it to a big band in Havana. All of a sudden, they take you away. It was really hard on me. I guess the nostalgia, the feelings made me write. And I wrote my first song. I sent a message because you go wait when the army takes you away in Cuba. You go wait for 45 days of intense training. Yeah, and your family is only allowed to see you the second week, the second Sunday, and then like twice in those 45 days. So when I was able to send a message to my town and ask my dad to bring a guitar. So when he brought it, because I was writing a song without a guitar, without an instrument in my hands, right? So when he came, I was so desperate to play that instrument. I grabbed it and I started playing. And my dad said, "What is that?" I said, "Song that I've been writing. I'm dying to play it, right?" So I played it all for him in front of him, and they loved it. They couldn't believe it. That's the beginning of me as a songwriter. So I was always then. I didn't serve in the army the whole time that you're supposed to do, which is 2 years, because at 5 months in, I got an asthma crisis, and they let me go. And I didn't look back. I went straight into songwriting, and then I got very close to somebody that actually passed away about a year ago in my town, who was a totally character, somebody very loved in my town, somebody that was very well known in Artemisa, somebody with a funny nickname. Paco, my friend, was his nickname. But Paco, my friend, was he studied chemistry in the university, and he went crazy. Something happened to him that he got sick. He went crazy. But the craziness make him become the most creative person I ever seen in my life. And he became a singer-songwriter. He would walk the street of town with the guitar hanging, and playing and singing for everybody. And he actually made it to be the winner of many national awards for poetry. So I was hanging out with him. He was like a coach for me, in poetry. The stuff that he will write, amazing. So I feel that I was very well influenced. I mean, I had the right influence. And actually before that, in grade 12, I had an incredible literary sort of teacher. So I always been floating in that world, and so it became, when I discovered that I had songwriting talent, language, poetry was always, something precious to me. So I remember my dad telling me, oh, you might want to change this word, that's too complicated, in some points, right? And then as an adult now, the more you do it, I have become more clear, more direct, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But poetry was always in me. I discovered that from early in my life,
It's interesting to me when you talk about moving to Canada, thinking that maybe you could be the bass player for Alanis Morissette or for Bryan Adams, or that you had a real awareness of who the pop stars of Canada were, what the pop world in Canada looked like.
That's awesome. Not at all, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in Cuba, at least back then, we didn't have an idea what pop music was. Maybe because of how close we were, towards the United States, and the way Cuba has managed the music industry, right? To the point where musicians they go out of Cuba and they don't know anything about marketing. They don't know about to promote themselves. They don't know what pop music is, and that has actually become a challenge. And I feel that the only reason why I have done what I've done in music is because I went to Canada in order to simplify myself,
mm-hmm.
which happens later when I entered the recording world, and realized that because I didn't have the reference of pop music, I can play so thick and so complicated in anything that it's not appealing. It's jazz pretty much. It's great. Jazz is great, but if you're trying to do pop music, to come at it from a jazz, it might be tricky.
Well, like you said before we started working together, when you have a jazz background, you have to challenge yourself to be simple.
Absolutely.
Which I love.
Absolutely. And it's funny because it's you have to connect with the mind of the mind, because
mm-hmm.
I think jazz is a bug that gets in you, and once it touches your blood, you will never heal from it. You got to then think with the other mind in order to control that mind.
The mind of the mind.
The mind of the mind, yeah.
One of the things that I am curious to know about is how you are perceived now in Cuba, now that you're as much a Canadian artist as a Cuban artist. Do they see you as one of their own when you go back to Cuba, or do they see you as like a kind of somebody who left?
Well, I'm going to start by saying that I was never known there as Alex Cuba. I was never a singer, nothing. So very few people know me, in the music industry there, in the music world. I won't say industry.
Yeah, right.
When I won my first Latin Grammy in 2010, a lot of people saw me in Cuba, right? Especially in my town. Because some people have, like illegal antennas. They sort of homemade and, make them antennas. And they pick up the signal from the United States. And so somebody picked up the Latin Grammys. And all of a sudden they see it and they recognize me. This guy's from here.
Yeah.
They gave the tape to a house that rents videos down there. They still rent like VHS, right? Tapes. And they made a copy, and that thing was rented to a lot of people in town. So,
did you thank your town or anything? Did you say anything about Artemisa when you won it?
No, I thanked my parents, and that was about it. My wife, my kids, and I didn't mention Cuba or anything. Or Canada. I was just completely neutral about that. That's how a lot of people got to know me there. And now I know because people tell me that I have like a fan base there. But a lot of people see me as somebody different, somebody strange, in how come he's from here, but he sounds so different, Because I don't do tropical music, which is what most of us do when we live, But I have taken it in a different direction, and I'm just having fun with being a musician, doing whatever I want and letting my creativity go and really take me where it wants to take me.
Yeah.
So I go there and I'm on the ground. I hang with my parents in the town, which is about an hour west of Havana City. I enjoy being not recognized, nothing, I enjoy being on the ground. I'm there either for work or just to spend a couple of days with my folks,
I know when we first met, you had pretty much just finished making Humo de Tabaco, which was, I suppose, your first record as Alex Cuba.
Yes.
And you made it primarily in Havana.
Yes.
At Egrem, this great studio where I think a lot of us first became aware of that studio because it's where they made the Buena Vista Social Club record.
Yes.
In the film. But had you spent time working in that studio or in that scene before you left Cuba, or was it really that you became connected to it after you left Cuba?
Well, yeah, before I left, I actually made a record on that studio. And I have a funny story to tell you, something amazing that happened. I don't think I ever told you the reason why I did the album there. The idea with Martin Tervey, the producer that produced the album, was for me to go to London first and do most of the album there. Mm-hmm. And then go to Havana for some Havana touches, on the album, right? Which is what I ended up doing later in my career.
On your other records.
That's how I do my records now, right? But when I applied, I was still on a Cuban passport. And when I applied for the visa to go to London, they sent my passport back to me with a letter saying, we can issue a visa on this passport because it's scotch taped. Cuba had really weird passports that they were all famous for falling apart. So the little booklet will fall out of the cover, right? I sent it to the consulate for them to fix it, to give me a new one. And they sent it back taped. It's good, it's all good. So the British sort of laughed at me, because what is this? We're not going to give you a visa. So I panicked when I got that letter, oh my God, my plan is going to go down. So I phoned Martin and I said, it's fine, no, not a big deal. Can you go get into Havana with that passport? And I said, well, they better let me in because they did this for me, right? Mm-hmm. I said, okay, let's change the plan and let's go to Havana instead and begin the album there. Then we got there and, there is a lot of musicians in Cuba, talented, and, we started getting excited and I put a band together with a bunch of friends that I knew. And before you know, we're making this incredible music, And Martin thought it was like heaven, oh my God, this is like nothing I heard before, man.
Yeah.
So, but I still was in love with the idea of putting my soul, Latin soul vibe and rock and pop and all of that into it, right?
So you were already thinking about rock and pop and soul music
absolutely.
already?
Yeah, absolutely. And then Humo de Tabaco didn't change because Martin was afraid to touch the vibe. Mm-hmm. And I followed him and decided to believe him, He said, dude, what we got is magical.
Yeah.
I know for experience, that if we touch that, if we mess with that, it's going to sound very cheesy. I don't know, maybe we failed with you because maybe we gave you what you didn't want.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want it to be the next Buena Vista Social Club.
Yeah. Next generation Buena Vista.
And let's make that clear. I didn't want it to be that.
And in some ways the record resembled a little bit of that.
Absolutely, because it's a traditional sounding record. However, with my harmonies, my chord changes, my sort of melodies, right, and songs. I even have a song there in 7/4, which is not very Cuban, But anyway, I didn't want it to be, seen as the next one. And what happened? Guess what happened? I even read, a couple of years later on the internet. Oh, this guy is. Somebody was saying that I was the song of somebody from Buena Vista Social Club. Huh. That's what happened, But anyway, it was all good, and I took that as a lovely experience, and
yeah,
and I just went with that, and the album did really well. I won a Juno in Canada, which gave me, my first Juno, and I think people connected to the soul on it, which is one element that if it's not in my music, then it's not me, People connected to that rather than this the next one. This is a club. They connected to my soul.
Yeah.
And so I thought Martin did a good job in the end. And
Did you use a click track on that record?
No, not in a lot of the zone, no.
No.
It was just open the microphones and go.
Yeah, old school.
Somebody count 3, please. And we go. Yeah, and we did it in 2-inch tape.
You had already spent time living and playing outside of Cuba. When you went back to Cuba to record that record with those guys in that studio, what was your perception of the way they played? Did you have a new vision of, working with Cuban musicians, having left Cuba and then going back to work there again?
Yeah, well, I had already been into Canada 4 years. And my view on Cuban music and on any music was already different. So my thinking was already like a Cuban that have never left Cuba would think, So when we got there, it was in the middle of the summer in July, really hot. Most of the musicians in town, they were on tour out of the country. So the studios around were like very cheap. They were giving all kinds of deals, And Martin the Terfi, the producer, he said, okay, really, let's go see all the studios in Havana, right? And we went to Abdala, which is a fancy one, and that was interesting because when I got in, it's the super fancy studio in Havana, and I hated it, because why am I going to record here? This sounds like I'm inside a hospital or something.
Yeah.
It's like so clean and but that was already the Alex Cuba, away from Cuba, Canadian sort of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same we did. We looked at a couple of other studios, and we went to the one where Buenavista's Club recorded, right? As the last one to that we want to see. And it was fun. It was like a sign of God. Getting out of the car, right beside the studio, there is like a CD store, and they have huge speakers, and they play music really loud. Just getting out of the car, they were playing something that I recorded 5 years ago before, And I said, wow, that's a huge sign, man. We walked in, and when we saw that at the studio, I did an album before I left there, but I remember thinking the reverse. I remember thinking, oh, this is a really old room.
Yeah.
Oh, nobody wants to be here.
When you were still living in Cuba, that's what you thought.
And then when I walked in 5 years later, oh, this is paradise. Yeah. This is so amazing. Loved it. And then Martin said, yeah, this is where we're going to stay and do our album,
Yeah.
When Cuba, as I say, you kick a rock and you find like 10 musicians like 200 musicians under the rock. Mm-hmm. Each one better than the other one going, pick me, hire me, They are very competitive and they need to play, show you every bar of the song, how good they are.
Why do you think they're so competitive? That you told me once that Cuban musicians, once they become professional, they're paid a salary by the government.
Mm-hmm.
So the competition isn't coming from an economic point of view. What is the impulse?
I think it's just our identity. It's just the way we are. We are like that. We are like, we want to be the best. We want to show off. And a lot of the music that is being made lately is just music for musicians because of that, But yeah, I had to keep a close hand, tight hand on the musicians because they were all playing every song. And it took us like, I don't know, like a lot of convincing to do and talk and do. No, until they got it. And when they got it, it was amazing. All the time you were able to hear the song, right? And then like a year later, I went back there and I put together the same group and took them to the same studio and I played them the record, right? And it was so interesting to watch their faces, man. They didn't believe themselves. Is that me? Oh my God, that sounds so great. Of course, man. Of course, because you're being part of a group. You're letting every element work, So that was quite the experience, yeah.
The reason I keep kind of coming back to this question of your Cuban identity versus your Canadian identity is because I'm just so fascinated by, I remember where we left off in the first part of our conversation. It was when you were sort of clarifying for me the difference between being a pop singer and being a singer-songwriter.
Yes.
And I had asked you about your lyric writing and your approach to writing lyrics or where that came from. The thing that interests me so much is that you have become, on the one hand, a Latin artist. You've won Latin Grammys and you're perceived outside of Canada in a small way and hopefully growing way as a Latin artist and a Latin songwriter, Spanish language songwriter. But within Canada, you're also kind of one of their own. You're kind of a national Canadian artist at this point. You've also won Junos. You're kind of on the Canadian scene. They play your records on the radio. You must be one of the only artists in Canada recording in Spanish.
you write songs in Spanish that most people in your country can't understand.
Exactly. And my audience there, 98% is Canadian, you know. I think it's because they are the honesty in which I choose to do my things, my music, you know. I think it speaks to them. My harmonies, the sound of my voice, my guitar playing, all of that. I am very aware that I live in Canada, you know. I don't take that by granted, you know.
Yeah.
So I make music that reflects where I am. I don't make music to compete with what I left in Havana, right?
Yeah.
Because that would be a mistake, you know. I don't know. That's what my soul tells me. That if you live here, this is where you have to be in soul, in heart, and everything, you know. Otherwise, you don't exist, pretty much, you know. But Canada is a country that people really appreciate when a man can just grab, or a woman can just grab a guitar and sing. So I do that, you know, and you know, I think they just appreciate my songwriting and voice and all that, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky, I guess, you know.
Have you ever had an experience of writing a song where you think, maybe this lyric is a little bit abstract or a little political or a little something, but it doesn't matter because my audience in Canada doesn't understand it?
No. I never think that way. That's a great question, though. Because I joke about that on my shows. You know, I said, you guys, I could totally be saying you know, the most horrible things about you, actually, and you guys don't understand shit of what I'm saying, you know? It's like, no, I take it very seriously, you know? Regardless that there's a lot of people that go to Cuba every year from Canada, a lot of Canadians, you know? And they're learning more and more Spanish, you know? I joke about that. I said, my mission is to make Spanish kind of third official language.
Yeah.
You know? No, I take a lot of pride in what I write.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I am aware that even when I'm producing the kind of music that functions in the environment in which I live, I am aware that music is not anymore a local thing, you know.
Yeah.
It travels throughout the internet. And, for example, Venezuela plays my music on the radio in a regular basis, and I've never been there. The same with Argentina, and the same with Colombia and places like that. And people talk to me every day on the internet and stuff like that. So I know that today more than ever we have a global appeal, you know. I mean, reach,
yeah. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was teasing you earlier today that you're an expert with social media because you make an effort to stay in touch with your fans and the people that follow you, and you update all the time.
No, you said that because I changed my profile picture.
You
quite
do
often.
Change your profile picture a lot.
Oh, that's just because I like taking selfies, man.
Yeah.
Selfies where he's at.
Well, when you got an afro like yours, go with the fro. When you got a fro, that's what you got to go with.
Well, my wife thinks that I'm weird because I take way too many selfies.
Which it might be true. I don't know. But you do understand the value of self-promotion. You have a very self-contained career. You know, you're essentially self-managed. You self-release your records. You take control of all of the essential ingredients of a career. And you're probably the best example of how the global reach works because you're in Smithers in Canada.
Man, you're going to make me cry if you keep talking like that. It's true. I do all of that, you know, and I don't think I think about it because it wouldn't be possible, you know. I mean, it will depress me, you know, in a way. But instead, I choose to try to stay connected to the source that gives me everything, which is the inspiration, you know. And regarding the social media and stuff, I try to keep it very tight with work, you know. Every time I go there, I have to have something to say about what I'm doing, or here is what I just did, you know, whatever, you know. I try to keep it there and make clear of what I am, you know, to my fans and to whoever sees my page for the first time, right? So I have developed a sense of responsibility with that, you know, like I have to do it because it's a way to remain in touch, you know.
Is it important for you to feel like you're in touch too? Do you feel isolated sometimes in the way you're living? Do you feel isolated from the rest of the musical community or your fans or anybody?
I'm going to tell you something. Yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I do feel like, you know, I wish I could be in a city where I could play music every day of the week with different musicians, you know, and explore the new ideas. But that changes every time I get to do things like what I just did with you, you know, like send you my songs and to hear you say, I love this, man. Because I wrote it in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
Watching 2 feet of snow out of my window, you know, or, I don't know, a bear in the backyard or something, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that we are like a server, like a computer, for example. If you keep a computer updated and you plug it into the power, you know, it will do its thing, you know, it will last whatever it was meant to last, you know. I think we are the same. If you stay in touch with your higher self, knowing that where you are is where you're meant to be, and knowing that you're doing what you were meant to do, and knowing that you're loving the right person because you really love it, you know. I think very, very little things can go wrong in your life, you know, because you won't see them as wrong, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
You could be like wasting your life and you don't give a shit about it, you know, and who cares in the end, you know?
I really can't picture your life when you're home, man. You know, you told me a story the other day about having to be one of 7 men to lift a bear and throw it off a cliff. Somebody's got to get this bear out of the yard, and you guys lifted a bear.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just picture 6 Canadian guys
And a Cuban.
And a Cuban guy with a fro carrying a bear. You know, but so I don't know what the daily, you know.
You made me laugh.
Yeah, well, good. It's true, I think. But, you know, that's what I imagine. But, you know, I think, so I don't know what the distractions in your life really are. But I do think you probably have more time and headspace, emotional space to write and play music than you would, like, you know, you live in a city, you know, there's a lot of...
It's busy.
It's busy. Everything's busier.
Well, I have that really clear in my mind. You know, for example, it takes me 4 minutes to get to the airport.
Yeah.
I wait for the plane to go by. I see it, and that's when I go. You can do that in a small town, you know?
Yeah.
And that's more time that I give to my kids, my family, you know?
Yeah.
I also can walk everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, we're going to come to the city, and we're going to be like, wow. We're going to be, you know, you got to adjust yourself, right?
Yeah.
But I think I've only been able to do that because I come from a small town in Cuba, you know? So it's a lot of similarities. From small town to small town, it's the same. Mm-hmm. What is the similarities? People know you. You know people. Everyone seems familiar. People are friendly because it's like a big family, right? In a way. And I like that, man. You know, when I won my first Juno in Canada, when I went back to Smithers, the only limo in town, there was only one limo in town, was at the airport waiting for me. They took me into town. They gave me a ride of the whole town. There were signs on the town. Welcome back, Alex. We are so proud of you. You don't find that anywhere else, man. New York's not gonna do that for me.
They're not. No, you have to do. You have to win some really special shit to get a parade in New York.
No, I have or do something close to a superhero. Save the city from something or something.
Exactly.
You know?
The other thing I wonder is if writing the songs that we're recording right now, you know, looking at 2 feet of snow, especially when I think about a song like Sarah, thinking it really is a very Cuban song. It's a very folkloric song. And you weren't really interested in Cuban folkloric music when you were a Cuban musician. But I wonder if with that sort of perspective and that distance from that music that you really grew up, like that your dad played in the house, if maybe you started to incorporate some of that back into your music with the perspective of being so far removed from it.
It might be happening, I don't know. However, I don't miss Cuba, and I don't miss where I come from, because I feel that I need to give my wife and my kids my 100%. Even musically, it's funny because I don't think of the song as ethnic, because there is chords and changes in there. When it goes to the diminution, and in the phrasing as well, it's so no Cuban, you know.
Huh.
So I see it maybe as an international interpretation of Cuban music.
Yeah.
That could probably be. But I have learned that once in a while you have to show your roots to people so they know how to place you in their own mind, you know, and be okay with it. Because, I'm Alex Cuba, but I'm playing some heavy metal, you know, they're going to be like...
Well, I think this is a conversation that you and I have been having over and over again about how to contextualize you.
Yes.
Because, you know, you sing in Spanish and people might have an expectation. They might have initially expected you to be
A salsa.
a salsa guy.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not going to be that. Okay, he's not salsa, but he's...
What is he?
What is he, you know?
Oh, reggae. No, wait.
But, man, you know, what are you? I really don't know what you are, man. And I know who you are, but I don't know where to place you. And the more we talk about it, the more mysterious it is to me, because you're a Canadian artist. Canadian domestic artist in a lot of ways. I mean, you're out there.
And I feel very
scene.
Canadian. I feel so Canadian. I travel the world, and when I get back to Canada, I feel, I'm home, you know. I don't think there is a need to define me. You know, I haven't felt it myself.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, you know, but I feel that I am somebody that is, if you need to think of me of something, think of me of that person that is bringing Latin music, Latin soul to Anglo audiences in a way that has never seen before.
Yeah.
Because no one else have gone to Smithers to live there and make music from there. So,
yeah, I think that this question of Latin and soul, you know, you said to me, for example, when we were working on one of your songs, and it was a more Latin song, you said, listen, I have to be careful when it comes to Latin music. My artist name is Alex Cuba.
yes.
So I can't do fake Latin music. If
Absolutely,
you know, there has to be some truth in the sort of the Latin element of the music.
Yeah.
You can't fake that part of it.
What did you think of that?
I thought that was really telling and really intelligent. But it gave me a sense of how complicated the musical identity is and your personal identity is.
Absolutely, yeah. But it comes from being a musician, right? And from understanding. You know what? Like they say. You know what they say, that in order to break the rules, you need to learn them first.
Yes.
So that's where it comes from. You know, this that I learned the rules.
Yeah.
And I think that I also learn how to break them.
Yeah.
So I am respecting those rules. You know.
Yes.
Not wanting to get my hands dead in there for the wrong reasons, you know.
Yeah.
And Cuban music has many defined genres, you know, within Cuban music. And in my opinion, they are for people that are meant to continue those genres, you know. But whoever wants to explore and whoever wants to just be a creative won't be able to do it from Cuba, I think. Mm-hmm. In the way that I'm doing,
because it's too dogmatic within the Cuban scene.
Yeah, but then you find people inside of Cuba that are trying to do rock and they're trying to do blues, and then it sounds fake because they're still thinking very Cuban. So,
what do you think about Latin music and the sort of expectations that the market puts? You know, within Cuba, I think you've made it clear that there's very complicated music. It's a lot of music made by musicians for musicians. Maybe the general listener has a more sophisticated ear because they're used to hearing complex music.
Yeah.
But in general, the music is like maybe more complicated than it needs to be because you have such a high level of education.
Absolutely.
And outside of Cuba, it's almost the opposite when it comes to Latin music, right? Like, you know, you told me earlier today, everybody started saying Dale because of Pitbull.
Yeah.
And it made me think, well, what do you think of like the phenomenon of Pitbull in the mainstream cultural market?
Regardless if I like his music or not, I don't think that's the point here. I actually respect him and admire him because he's been working at it for a long time and developing his craft. He found a way to communicate with his audience, you know, and make it grow. I think that deserves respect, you know, in many ways, you know. I don't find him very Cuban, you know, in a way. I don't think he's portraying Cuban culture in a way. But once in a while you hear the Cuban thing comes out of him. But I think what I'm saying is that he found a more an international way to communicate with audiences, you know. Mm-hmm. And that takes some talent.
Yeah.
There is no question about it. It takes talent. Anyway, however, one thing that I want to say is that Latin music is in many countries very underestimated or something, sometimes even looked down in a way, you know?
Yeah.
Not that respected, you know? And I find that it's because of that, because Latin music or Cuban music, whatever, lives in what it could be perceived as a huge world, but also a small world, because it's always the same, you know? So I find, and this is where my name, you know, because I know we talked about this on the street the other day, come to make sense to even myself. I find that, for example, the Afro-Cuban All-Stars,
Yeah.
incredible band from Havana. I find that they go to Canada to play, right? And they play, and of course they have with their presence the excitement of, wow, direct from Havana. There is a big, huge band coming from Havana, right? So there is already excitement about seeing this exotic sort of music, right? But I find, man, with a lot of people that I met that have gone to see these shows, that they watch the show, they are halfway through, they are not even sure what they're doing in there, because all of a sudden the music starts sounding all the same, and it's because you crash into that cultural world, right? And then, boom, the show is done. People might even buy the CD, out by the merch tent or whatever, and they get home. The next day, they might play the CD, well, just while they're making dinner, just to remember the great band they saw the night before. The following night, they might even play it one more time, I don't know. But there comes a time where the CD goes into a drawer, and the next time they play is when they invite people for dinner, like 6 months later, and they go, do you remember that band that we went to see, that Latin Cuban band? Where is the CD? Because they want to sort of give that ambient to. No, because the music speaks to them. So I am proud to be introducing the name and Latin music to a lot of people that not necessarily know of what Latin music is.
Yeah.
But they like what I do.
Yeah.
For reasons that they don't understand. So that I'm proud of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that goes back to your answer of how do you explain surviving and thriving in a mostly English-speaking market, singing in Spanish, and your answer is because there's truth in the music, even if they don't know what you're saying.
And I guess it also says that, explains in a way that why I live in Sweden and why I have this, why you having a hard time putting a finger in what I am, because it's I'm not portraying any cliche in Latin music. Maybe,
yes. No, you're not. And the United States is a funny example of what the Latin concept is. I mean, I worked on the song with Jorge Drexler for the Motorcycle Diaries, and when it was nominated for an Oscar, the first thing that became clear was that Jorge was not going to be allowed to sing the song at the award ceremony because he wasn't famous. And then they started looking for other notable Latin artists who would sing the song. And the artists that were suggested...
I saw it on YouTube.
Well, you saw what they ended up with, which was Antonio Banderas with Carlos Santana, which is probably the most random pairing of two people with a Latin last name you could ever think of, But before that, it was going to be Enrique Iglesias, and it was one name after another that had so little to do with
what the song was.
What the song was, and even the part of the world that it came from, and the universe that it was talking about.
Thanks for putting that up. That's to tell how underestimated and looked down Latin music is in North America.
Yes, misunderstood.
But when it comes to Cuban music, for example, people have this this memory of it. That they went on a trip to Cuba and they went to this party and they met, if it's a man, met this amazing woman, and then they go back to Canada or the United States and they have this memory and they want to replicate that here. But to me, it doesn't come from respect or because the music is grabbing you, So it becomes a question of how do we sell Latin music, How do you gain that respect for Latin music? I get horrified when I see my friends playing in Toronto, playing Cuban music at a restaurant for nearly nothing, playing like if they were playing in Cuba, trying to be in tune with what's happening in La Habana, right? And the whole thing becomes so fake and weird. It's like nobody's going to ever respect you, It's like we need to find ways to tell people that, here in North America, that it's a cultural thing. It's no, the music is happy, it's danceable, but there's some seriousness inside of it.
It's a funny cultural position to be in because the Spanish-speaking world is very big if you put it all together. But on the other hand, somebody from Cuba, somebody from Chile, somebody from Mexico, so there's a lot that's very different culturally.
Yes, that's true.
What is common is the language, and that's what I think is so valuable about what you're doing and actually has the potential to grow much bigger than it has, is because you're a songwriter in the traditional sense, in the sense that other people could record your songs and do record your songs also, beyond genre, beyond national identity. But the whole Latin identity is so complicated, and in the States people think about it so much. And I just keep going back to this idea that you're somehow contributing to that question, but you're doing it from fucking middle of nowhere, man.
It's really a beautiful place, and the quality of life there is as good as it can be. So I am actually proud to be giving my family a good life,
So where do you think this is all going? I mean, where would you like to see it going? I don't think that any of this was what you expected, but now that you're in this position in your life, and from sitting where you are right now, where would you like to go from here?
You want to know how I really feel, at this time in my life, I'm going into my 5th album, in which I have the pleasure to work with you. I really feel that I have told a lot about me in those 4 records. And I really feel that people are starting to catch on to them now. So that makes me feel, first of all, it tells me that I have to be so patient. Because I'm looking at Latin music in a way that not a lot of people do. I've chosen a way to record my music which is entirely honest and real, and amplify my influences, making them real, no pretending at all anywhere, I feel accomplishment, I mean to say. I feel that if from here now, if that is success in the big scale, in the big picture or whatever, even more success that I had. For me, it's not a question if I'm going for it or not. It's a question that is just there for me or not, I'm just going to keep doing my music the way I do it, without, and the most important thing is for me not to lose the communication with my heart and my soul, and make sure that every step I take in music is because I want to say something musically, that I will do whatever it takes to never lose it, because the day that happens, that's when you're really done,
Yeah.
Whether you start selling millions of records, but you don't like music anymore, that has to suck, I have to say. So that's my goal, is to remain in love with music,
Yeah.
Success is just all relative,
Man, it's such a pleasure to get to spend time with you and to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing all of your experience with me, and also for this week of work that we've done.
It's been a blast, really great time, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Alex.